Welcome to Trial Site News podcast series. My name is Adrian, and today we are excited to have Kim Kundert, a research executive with VirTrial, is here with us today. So Kim, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, the pleasure is ours. Now, as a side note, this is our first show back for the new year for 2020, and have missed getting to do this week in and week out. And Kim, we here at Trial Site News, we've observed the beginning trend towards decentralized and even virtual trials with the advent of new technologies such as telemedicine platforms, clinical trial-based apps, cloud computing, and more. And after all that, we understand that traditional site-based clinical trials represent challenges for participants. For example, often a trial will be held at a major academic medical center and the participant may be hours away. Now, it becomes inconvenient to get to the study site, and sometimes the participants can't afford to participate. And so when we learned of VirTrial and its mission, we applauded the effort and hence wrote our article, which you can read at trialsitenews.com, which you can find with the search title Certification Comes Out of Nowhere but May Be Going Somewhere Fast, which of course we'll also be adding a link in the description for easier access. Now, Kim, obviously we appreciate you taking the time to speak with us here. And before we deep dive into our topic today, if you don't mind telling us a little bit about yourself, how did you first get involved in clinical trials?
Sure. Well, I am a nurse by training and was working in hospital setting and decided that I wanted to do something different. So I answered an ad and kind of just fell into research that way. I started conducting clinical trials at a research site as a coordinator, and then kind of worked my way up to be head of operations for a large site network, and really have spent the last 19, 20 years really trying to do, from a nurse perspective, like you want to help as many people as possible. And with that role, I felt like we were having a big impact in bringing better and new medications to patients and giving them additional opportunities.
Now, how did that translate into VirTrial getting started and you being involved with this?
Yep, good question. So over that long period of time, with seeing the change in clinical trials and the protocols becoming more stringent and it more and more difficult to find appropriate patients for the trials, we were constantly struggling with recruitment and retention, which is an industry-wide challenge.
Right.
And we figured there had to be a better way, because we would have patients call and say, you know what, I talked with my boss, I can't come in every Friday anymore, or I have a sick child, the things that just happen in life that allow them not to be able to continue participating or to not be able to participate to begin with. As you mentioned, they may live a long way from the study center or not have transportation to get there.
Now, what gave you the idea to come up with a certification?
Well, being a site advocate, it was kind of, okay, so we have telemedicine and then we have clinical trials where everything is done at the site level. How do we bridge the gap? And, obviously there's been telemedicine, there's been all of these other patient-reported outcomes and apps, as you mentioned, that can collect data and take some of the clinical trial functions out of the clinic, bring them to the patient at their home. But then the big question was like, well, how do you do that? Like, I'm not a tech person, I don't know anything about, a lot of the technology. And I figured that sites would have the same thing. It's like in the past when other, technologies had become or integrated into clinical trials, such as there was electronic data capture, and when first electronic diaries would come out, it was a lot of technology they would just send to the site. There wasn't a lot of training, and it was like, okay, how do I use this? And not only how do I use it, but then I have to teach the patient how to use this. So the thought was, we don't want to do that to sites, and we know that there's going to be similar knowledge gaps. So what can we do to help, bridge that gap of how all the coming technology and then how to do it?
Right, which is crucial because without training technology itself, it's
useless. Yes,
exactly. It can even do more harm than good, honestly.
Yeah.
So speaking of training, then, what is the VirTrial training?
VirTrial training, I guess the simplest explanation I can give is it's essentially telemedicine etiquette, or the basics of telemedicine. So do you have a webcam? Do you have speakers? Where are they? Make sure that they're turned on. things that you wouldn't normally think about, because the patient's in the clinic with you. The other thing to consider is you have to make sure you're in a quiet and secure, confidential environment, because you might be sharing protected health information about the patient or getting questions answered from them, and you can't be out in an open area. So it's not just like you're FaceTiming somebody, it's an actual medical clinical visit, so you need to be aware of your dress code and your demeanor and how to engage the patient, making sure you have eye contact, all of those things to make them feel as comfortable over telemedicine as they would be if you were conducting the visit in person together.
Right, which then brings us back to why is training so important?
Exactly.
Now, how many organizations have been certified to date?
We have over 1,000 organizations certified to date, and that's actually we rolled it out in August, so it's about 4 months that we've been able to do that.
You guys are making good progress.
Yes, we're making very good progress. There's been great interest and uptake from sites who really see the technology that's coming their way. It's going to become more and more common in clinical trials, and they want to make sure that they are ready and showing, pharmaceutical companies that they understand the technology, they embrace it, and they want to be a part of those trials.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even today, there are a lot of companies that are starting to use virtual meetings with doctors. Say, Planned Parenthood, for example, they have their own mobile app now. So it's on the rise. So then what is your goal? I mean, you've made amazing progress in 4 months. What is your goal then for 2020?
2020, we'd like to have 5,000.
Oh, wow.
Yes, it's a lofty goal, but I think with just the increasing uptake and the awareness of decentralized clinical trials or hybrid decentralized trials, that the interest just continues to grow, and I think that would be definitely will be achievable.
That would be amazing if so, and I think you're definitely on the right track. So what do you foresee then with virtual trials and virtual visits?
Well, VirTrial's model is a hybrid or a combination of in-clinic visits and telemedicine visits. As you probably know or suspect, clinical trials are very complicated. Safety of the patient is of the utmost importance. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of testing and procedures that are done in a clinical trial, and not all of them can be done outside of a clinic. So it's a matter of what items or procedures could be done outside, and maybe you're just the patient's checking in. Are you doing okay? Have you had any changes in your health? Filling out questionnaires that are assessing their quality of life or level of pain or some other kind of rating scale. And it really, then if it's like an X-ray or an EKG or ultrasound, then obviously it needs to be done in the clinic, because those aren't necessarily portable machines. But with the telemedicine, then you can also allow the physician to virtually examine the patient if they don't need to touch them. Obviously there's limitations, but it expands the capability of what can be done outside of the clinic.
And so on that note then, how open do you think patients are and will be in the future in regards to virtual visits?
So far, in just dealing, with I dealt with probably, thousands and thousands of patients over my 20 years at the clinical trial site. And I would say most patients are open and will be accepting of it. Actually, I think more so than maybe home health or somebody coming into their home, because I would say there's probably, a third of the population that did trials that did not want, home health or somebody else coming into their home. That's kind of their own space, their private space.
The sanctuary, right.
Right. And the way that it's created, it's very simple and easy for the patient to use. So it's not a complex technology that they need to try to, go through a bunch of steps and figure out. It's been designed for a very simple, seamless user experience.
And that's important too.
Right. And part of that thinking is our platform is actually an app, and it can be used on any device. So the idea is it's their phone or tablet or computer that they're already using and they're comfortable with. They know how to, go to the homepage. They know how to exit out of it. They know how to log in. So like very basic things that if you're adding an additional device, you would have to teach the patient to use.
Right. You're building on their comfortability with their own device.
Yep,
Perfect.
exactly. Yep.
So what made you then decide to branch off into this arena?
Virtual trials, is that what you're referring to? Or
yes.
Okay, virtual trials, yes.
Well, both, really.
Both, okay. Well, as I mentioned, we have the challenges that seems to keep, growing, and more trials were like, okay, how can we enroll enough patients and reach enough people to enroll in the trial that meet this small criteria? So the thought is, well, right now we're limited to the people who geographically, are near enough or willing to drive. But if we could create something where we decrease the burden that, they don't have to come, instead of coming to the clinic 13 times, maybe they only need to come 6 or 7 times. So it's really about reducing the burden on the patient. And some trials, as I mentioned, can be very intense, even if it's not like procedure-wise with blood drawing and things like that. There might be a lot of questionnaires. And so maybe it's a simple a text reminder through the platform or an email with just reminders to say, hey, you need to fill out your questionnaire today or this week, or you have a visit. So, all of the things that our healthcare provides now, you get reminders from your physician office or your dentist or your eye doctor. So really this is just incorporating the same kind of tools that they're using, but just to decrease that burden on the patient.
Right. Now, obviously, this is a fresh and an exciting platform that you guys have put together here. So do you have any competition then? And if so, who are they?
We do. There's other people out there who are looking at hybrid or decentralized clinical trials. Their models are slightly different. So there are Science 37, who's probably the first company in this space. They did the first fully virtual trial, and the difference between what they're doing and what we're doing is they utilize their set of physicians and coordinators and not necessarily using existing research sites and physicians. So their physician will be the one that will do the telemedicine consultation with the patient to do whatever procedures are required, physicals, and same with the coordinator. Whereas with our model, we're giving the tools such as the telemedicine platform for the research site where the patient probably, if it's a physician's office, where they're normally going to see their physician and study coordinator. So it has that continuity of care. It's somebody they're familiar with.
Gotcha. And so how would you best describe it then if you were telling those that might be interested in your VirTrial software? How would you tell them, okay, here's what makes us different or stand out from your competitors? Right.
So I've talked about lessening the burden on the patient, but we're also about lessening the burden on the sites, but also we understand how important sites are to the clinical trial conduct process. And we enable the existing clinical research sites to remain sustainable. So it's using the existing very experienced coordinators and principal investigators that have years of knowledge and experience conducting clinical trials. We're giving them the tools to keep doing what they know how to do instead of pulling in maybe newer physicians that know telemedicine but don't know clinical trials. I know that there's another company out there that is a competitor, and they are using, they provide not only with the telemedicine, but it's their group of physicians that they provide the telemedicine platform, but with it also comes the physicians. It's a physician network. So they're not involving the principal investigator who is going to oversee the conduct of the whole trial. They're outsourcing physical exams and other things. So there's a disruption to the continuity of care, I believe.
Well, thank you so much for talking with us today, Kim. It's been an elucidating and enlightening experience. And honestly, we love what you're doing here and are excited to see where this road lead for you guys. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure. And now for those of you in the audience interested in learning more, you can visit VirTrial.com, and all other links will be provided in the description below. And you can also find Trial Site News on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And the links will also be provided in the description below as well. So thanks again for joining us today, Kim. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.